New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And hello again, dear ones. Dr. Robert with you over here. I think Rev Z might have gotten frozen. Welcome to New Thought Today here on the New Thought Media Network. I am Reverend Dr. Robert Brzezinski. My co-host, Reverend Elzia Sekou, is here somewhere in the Ethernets. And our guest today, Reverend Joyful Flecther-Thompson. She is the current president of the Divine Science Ministers Association and somebody I have been working to have on the program for a while now. I know we got bumped at least once, maybe even twice, getting in our schedules together and getting you on the program. So I'm so grateful you're here. Welcome, welcome.
Well, thank you. And I'm grateful to be here as well. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's very good to have you.
Yes.
Yes. So, and we want to learn all about your ministry and who you are and what you do and show up in the world. And you've got this kind of important sounding title there, President Divine Science Ministers Association. Tell us a little bit about what that is and what that role entails and all of that. And then we'll kind of take a deeper dive into who you are and your ministry beyond the organizational stuff.
Sure. Well, I'm a Divine Science Minister, and the Divine Science Ministers Association is for support of the ministers, to provide resources, support emotional and spiritual support. And it's a really great organization. It's great.
Beautiful.
So sometimes we provide educational and presentations, as well as every other year we have a retreat, and sometimes that's in person and sometimes that ends up being virtual, but it's great. It's a great group. So what I do outside of that organization is my day job is a hospice bereavement coordinator. I've worked both as a hospice chaplain and the bereavement coordinator. Now, the bereavement piece is I follow families after a death of their loved one for about 13 months and engage them in grief processes and provide literature and conversations. And we also conduct rituals, annual remembrance service, and sometimes that's in person, and we also offer that virtually. It is a hospice, a Medicare covered benefit. I don't know if people know that if someone is on hospice, then they're also eligible for that grief support after. Sometimes I do provide grief support before their loved one dies. That's called anticipatory grief. People are anticipating what their life is going to be like and the idea of releasing their loved one. And I also conduct some support groups, and one of them is a dementia caregiver support group that I meet with once a month at a local facility. And this month we are hosting an elder care attorney service to talk to the caregivers about what kind of legal documents, what's really important to take care of, so when they can.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yes.
Welcome back, Z. Looks like technology is starting to become more friendly in your side of the world.
Yes, it. I don't know. Maybe I didn't give it the right snack this afternoon. I don't know. I maybe I had to give it blueberries and not grapes. I don't know.
But it worked. Great.
Exactly. So, so Reverend Joyful, tell us more. Your website is joyfulcircle.org, and tell us more about Joyful Circle as it is. So there's the hospice component and the compassionate care component. What kind of got you to all of this?
Well, interesting. I grew up in New Thought. I'm a fifth generation New Thoughter, and my sons are sixth, and my grandchildren are the seventh. And I remember my great grandmother talking about different things, and I just was fascinated. And then years down the road, after I had experience working in a nursing home as a nursing assistant, they called it, and I was younger and in a hospital. And I thought I wanted to be a physician or a doctor, and I considered that and looked at colleges, but I made different choices. Years later, my grandmother was in the hospital, and I went to visit her because it seemed like she was going to be transferred to a nursing home, and I didn't want her to have to do that herself. Well, she started, as we say, transitioning and changing after our first day together. So she never made it to the nursing home, but I watched her change that week, and I had never had any experience dealing with somebody as they were beginning the dying process. And I really believe that Spirit guided me what to ask her, what to say. And I asked her about her final wishes. Did she want, uh, how did she want to be remembered? What kind of service did she want? And had she made her arrangements and things like that? And I was able to take care of that stuff. And I wasn't with her at her bedside when she died, which I wanted to, but that was more for me. And I also learned more deeply that we are connected with each other, whether we're at somebody's bedside or not. We're connected by heart and mind and soul. Because once I arrived home from California, where she was, to Michigan, I had a dream where I saw my grandmother as I last saw her, and then it reversed the week because she did change. And I saw a beautiful arbor that people stand under to get married at times. And I heard the song, My Heart Will Go On from the Titanic. And then the phone rang. Literally, the phone rang, woke me up. And a gentleman on the other end of the phone said, I want to tell you that your grandmother just died. So that was powerful to me, powerful. And it still touches me and impresses me. And then a couple months later, some of us gathered at the ocean in California where she wanted her cremains to be scattered. And each of us had a little sachet of part of her cremains, and we stood on a pier and we tossed the cremains over the side. And my sister brought a Hawaiian lei because my grandmother had gone to Hawaii when she retired. And so when we were finished with scattering the cremains, she threw the Hawaiian lei on the water, and we watched the waves move that lei, and it turned into a heart. And so that was really beautiful. So that week, then when I was with my grandmother, and I was excitedly sharing with her about my ministry because I really believe in ritual, and I had a wedding ceremony business, and I was excitedly telling her the different stories and speaking engagements and things like that. And she said to me, "I thought you were going to be a physician." I said, "Well, I guess it's a metaphysician." So years later, I assumed leadership at a Unity Church in Muskogee, Oklahoma, which interestingly, my 2 times great-grandmother was a spiritual leader in Muskogee, Oklahoma. And so I ended up in that same town. And then later, I felt prompted to come back to Michigan, to Flint, Michigan. And later, I assumed leadership at a Unity Church in Flint. And while I was there, we received some mail, and they were asking for hospice volunteers. So I explored that, and I took some training as a hospice volunteer, and I also took advanced training as to be a bereavement volunteer. And then within a couple of weeks, one of my friends that didn't know, but again, that connection with each other, said, "I have something that I think you'd be interested in. We have an opening here as a hospice chaplain." So that was probably about 17 years ago. And I've been involved with hospice that long in various capacities. And I love it. I really, really love it. And then one thing led to another. I felt restless. I felt a learning like it was time to explore some more. So I started taking courses through the Conscious Dying Institute that is based in Boulder, Colorado.
Yep.
And since then, I've graduated as an end-of-life doula, end-of-life educator and advocate, as well as an end-of-life coach. So joyfulcircle.org encompasses all of that, and it lists some of the classes that I facilitate and some of the other services that I provide. And one of them is a class where it's over a series of 6 weeks to help you identify what's really important in your life and to embrace death as your friend so that you really embrace your life instead of running from in fear.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. 7 generations.
Yes, my grandchildren. Yeah.
And your 5th generation. I guess I had never put it together that we've been around that long.
Right. My great grandmother was best friends with Margaret Butterworth, who was Eric Butterworth's sister, and she knew their mother, May Butterworth, in Compton, California. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Because I wound up when Eric Butterworth was doing stuff at Lincoln Center in New York. I would go, a friend of mine invited me, and this was before I knew anything about New Thought. He invited me several times. He invited me once, and then we kept going, and I would go on my own to listen to him. And I had no idea who he was, really. I mean, I went a lot, and I enjoyed it, and everything. But in terms of putting the two together,
right,
no concept. And it took me, I don't know, 4 or 5 years having left New York and my friend making this transition that I started putting the dots together, and I said, wow. So that was interesting. But I love that story, if you will, that you just gave, because one of my aunts just passed away like 3 days ago. And right after she had her birthday, a few days after that, she passed away. And my cousin took pictures of the birthday, which she was, fairly lucid, and then some afterwards. And you could see the different person that was there on one day, and a few days later, a different person was there for sure. And it's, for me, I think about the all of the activities that are transpiring out in LA and the surrounding area and the loss and stuff there. And, the idea of full life circle is becoming more and more apparent, I would say, for lack of a better word. And to have someone like you available to shepherd, if you will, people through that process, where no matter which side of the equation they're on in that journey, I think is brilliant. And I think we all, as ministers, definitely we have our brief moments of it, but it's, as a minister, I think it's something that we have to begin to get steeped in, because it is full circle. And if we're going to practice and teach a metaphysics that talks about the spiral of life, then we have to be prepared to not just, talk to it, but to give some feeling and some heart to it when we talk to people and our practitioners and everything, when people go through that experience.
Yes, I believe that too. Thank you.
I see. It seems for me, we don't experience in New Thought as much, I guess, that we don't have that like lifetime minister.
Mm-hmm.
People don't. Now, number one, people in New Thought generally don't find ministry or start in the ministerial path until later in life.
Right.
But in many traditions, there is that lifetime minister that does the baptism and the blessing and the marriage and the death and the service and does that full and is part of generations, multiple generations of family. I think you sharing that you're a fifth generation New Thought strikes me as a little surprising, just because, again, we don't have that sense of deep multi-generational tradition that many other religious organizations and traditions do have, where I might stray and I might go away, but Father so-and-so is always going to be there when I go home to visit, and I'm always going to be able to, and with New Thought, we move around a little bit more. We don't seem to quite have that longevity. So I really love what you're doing and think it's really, really important, because just your presence helps instill in all the rest of us that deeper sense, that deeper consciousness of how do we embrace and honor and celebrate the entire life cycle, not just the brief moment that I might be a part of that life or influenced by that life.
And one quick thing is that by being a fifth generation, right? So even when you were young and growing up and wasn't probably paying any attention, not paying full attention to any of this, the principles and the teachings were steeped in the family. So things that have become commonplace, so to speak, were ingrained and infused with these teachings. So your embodiment of it, I would imagine, as you begin to study and get more into it, I would suggest that maybe things popped up. So yeah, grandma did this, dad did this, mom did this, because it was ingrained. And I so love that, and I'm jealous of that, because that's what we're trying to teach people to do, is to embody these principles so that it's not something that you necessarily have to study. You can go and refresh yourself, but it's not something you have to study, because study implies I got to learn it. But if I grow up with it, I'm steeped in it. It's who I am. And I love that. And I look forward to more and more, as the generation of New Thoughters mixed with whatever people may have come from, to begin to seed a real garden, if you will, of metaphysics across bounds, across denominations, theological practices, and religious precepts.
Agreed. And I find that as I grow older, wiser, I remember more stories that seemed maybe insignificant at that time, or experiences. And it's just more precious, the longer you live and experience life.
Well, and that's the question that comes to me is, do you, if I've done the math right, it would be your great grandmother.
Two greats.
Two greats. Okay, great grandmother
Yes.
that kind of got it all started in the family lineage. Do you know much about her experience and what led her? And I'm assuming it's divine science originally.
No, it was unity.
It was unity.
And that's what I grew up in. I was exposed to unity. My 2 times great grandmother was widowed twice, and I really admire her, that strength. And so at 65, she was ordained as a unity minister. And one time when I was at a conference at Unity Village, I decided to, I decided to visit the archives, and just started poking around, and I looked in a glass case outside of Myrtle Fillmore's office, and I read this open book, handwritten, and I saw my 2 times great grandmother's name that she received her papers in Kansas City. So the assumption is it's at 9th and Tracy, the original one, but we have no way of knowing that. But it was 1926. So she probably did rub shoulders with maybe the Fillmores or somebody related to them. And then she went to Muskogee, Oklahoma. And my grandmother wrote me a letter about this, that she would often take tracts, the little pieces of literature, and then she would collect like food, like bread or clothes or something from people in the area. And then she would walk to the segregated areas of town and not only give them something for their physical sustenance, but the literature. And she, and I'm just really proud that that's part of my lineage, And then my grandmother said that she had taken her mother had sacrificed to be able to afford piano lessons for my grandmother. So my grandmother did actually play the piano at times for her grandmother for services. And it was on the 2nd floor of a storefront. And she lived up there in the particular room where she had her classes, and it was separated. Her living quarters were separated by a curtain, and she had a little bed and a hot plate and stuff. And then she would have her little services on the other side. And when I was growing up, I really didn't like my name. Things were going on in my life and things, and I really feel that your name is important, and I didn't feel I could live up to it. And yet later, when I read my grandmother's letter that said that my 2 times great grandmother would climb the steep stairs up to that area where they had the service, and she would say, "Joy, joy, joy," as she went up those stairs. So that has a little bit different significance about my name. And so in Muskogee, Oklahoma, that's where she ministered. And and I actually have her New Testament Bible that my grandmother gave me when I was 16 years old, and it had a rebound, and it has a little unity wings on it and things. So
And this is your grandmother's mother we're talking about, right?
Her grandmother, my grandmother's grandmother. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, to think about that back then at 65,
Yeah.
becoming ordained, and then going to a whole different lifestyle from Michigan to Oklahoma.
Yes.
I'm not sure if that's where she came, but I'm thinking that it. I'm like, that's like night and day, and the
Right.
faith and belief to go to like night and day, and
Yes.
and be a trendsetter and a uh, and some people might say a rabble rouser, going down there giving stuff to people that are not part of the
That's right.
a
That's
great
right.
community,
She
is
was
a
a,
testament to this teaching.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. She believed in supporting people, and thank you. I agree with that. I also remember another story that when it would be my great uncle was very ill and he wasn't expected to live. So my 2 times great grandmother showed up and said, well, I'm taking care of him. No one else is going to nurse him. I'm staying in the room with him, because she didn't want anyone's negative or fearful thoughts to enter that room. So
Right.
she made sure she fed him, she prayed with him, or as we would call treating him, and stayed with him, and he recovered and lived a long life. So I thought that was fascinating too, that she was so, because she was trained well by those new thoughters, that, you don't want negative thoughts and other people's fear to interfere with your healing. So.
I remember Divine Reverend Kathy Vogt, Dr. Fred Vogt's wife, many times would say, why in the world are we praying for someone to have a peaceful death? That is not what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We're praying for them to have a peaceful life.
Yes.
And however that life would be. And she would often talk about we were becoming too quick to just, oh, okay, yep, they're going to die, and be laissez-faire about it, and just accept the fact that, okay, and pray for them to be done with it already, kind of thing. And that, no, a new thought is based on that. Get clear, get the disbelief out of the equation, so that the patient, if you will, can experience a true sense of trust, of faith, of a deep assurance that life is eternal, and they are continuing to live. Right on. This is rich. I love these.
Mm-hmm.
And I just attended a work session, and this is amazing to me, that at my job we have wellness programs that deal with everything from diet to meditation to exercise. That just 5 years, 10 years ago, definitely maybe 7 years ago, those things weren't heard of in corporate America, right?
Right.
And now that they are, I think it's great. But we had a session today that was talking about the flow state, right? Which in metaphysics, we might call that being in the presence. And they were talking about the different biochemical, adrenaline and serotonin and things like that were being released when a person was in a certain environment or a certain state. So with your grandmother there, creating an environment that allowed the brain. This was a fascinating thing, because it talks about what we do in metaphysics, is that when we get out of our conscious mind and allow the subconscious mind to take over, we block what's going on in the frontal lobe. There's a whole nother magic going on behind there. And if we can create that and allow that to flow, which is what a good minister and practitioner is striving to do, it's like being in a magical place all the time.
Exactly. Folks, we are in a magical place all the time. It's called New Thought Media Network. And that means that we're going to take a minute to say thank you and be in that magical space with some of our sponsors and those that make all of this happen. So please, while we grab a sip of water and a quick stretch, we're going to let you check out a little bit more about what we're all up to. This is New Thought Media Network and New Thought Today. We'll be back in just a minute. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
New Thought Media Network proudly presents the 2025 season for Nonviolence Meditation Series, January 31st through April 4th. Embrace nonviolence every day with our 64 unique video meditations. Join us at 6 a.m. Mountain Time or watch anytime on our YouTube channel. Featuring a collection of New Thought voices, the 2025 season for Nonviolence Meditation Series. Only on New Thought Media Network, January 31st through April 4th.
Join our celebration of Black History Month. Only on New Thought Media Network. New videos every day at 6 a.m. Eastern Time or watch anytime on our YouTube channel. 28 unique Black History moments. Every day in February. Come join us as we celebrate Black History Month. Only on New Thought Media Network.
And we're back with more of New Thought Today here on the New Thought Media Network. I'm Dr. Robert, my co-host, Reverend Elzia, here with our new friend. I feel like you're a new friend. I'm learning more about you today than I have in a while. Reverend Joyful Flecther-Thompson is with us. She's the president of Divine Science Ministers Association, and also I just got all tongue tied because you're on the board of the International New Thought Alliance. You and I were both elected to the board just back in July, August. I don't know. And so we're kind of being in this, getting to know each other 20 minutes at a time, once a month or so. So I'm really grateful you're here. And this is rich because there's so many stories from that have gotten us here. And it almost feels like you might have been a little bit of the rebel, being the history of unity in your background, and now here you are on the divine science side of it all, and you're talking to a couple of religious scientists of it all, and I think that's part of what I'd love to continue now to explore with you is over time we're letting go of that sense of denominationalism within New Thought and coming to a greater under a collective working together and cross-pollination. I think we got all kinds of terms for it and such, but I would love to learn a little more. You've got an insider view. You've got a behind-the-scenes kind of perspective. Where's it all headed? What's generation 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 of your family going to inherit? What kind of legacies are we building today for the future of this movement?
Yes, that's interesting to think about, isn't it? Yes. In 1993 and 94, I accompanied a religious science group to Russia. Santi, the group was called Santi, and taught the science of mind principles. That was a life changer for me too. So New Thought is New Thought. We may have different language for different things or a little bit different approach, but at the heart of it, it's New Thought, and it's wonderful. It's really, really wonderful. And I think that's so important for today's world, is to find the commonality and still celebrate some differences, a different approach. So, yes.
Yeah. when you said that, it just made me think about, when someone says, "Oh, I'm a doctor," we don't really know what kind of doctor they are, right? We don't know if they're a general practitioner, or if they're a heart surgeon, or if they're a psychiatrist, or the many other different kind. But what came into my mind when you said was that they're all doctors. And even though I may specialize in the heart, there's some general stuff I can give you. But if you got heart trouble, I can really deal with that. Or, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, but if you got broken bones, I can deal with that. But in general, I can deal with a lot of stuff. And so when we begin to look at these teachings in that way, whether you're from Unity or Divine Science or religious science, we're metaphysicians in that administer certain types of perspectives,
Right.
but at a general level, we're all metaphysicians, and we can minister or doctor to general life. And then if you need, if you need a specialist, then I'm gonna call Joyful and say, "Hey, I got a special case over here. I've done some diagnosis work. I'm gonna give it to you." Boom. And I think we have to start looking at it that way, because that's why I think, we're metaphysicians.
Yes. Yes.
And
All right.
Mike.
Yes. Go ahead. We all have the same thought.
I know. I was going to have a question, just from looking at your grandkids. I'm not sure how old they are, or if they, but how do you see them fitting in to this philosophy? Because one of the challenges I think all religious traditions are having in some way or another is attracting and keeping the young people.
Yes.
So I'm curious to hear your take on that, or your insights on that, because it's something that's important and it's needed given the trajectory of where the spaceship Earth is headed.
Well, just basic interactions when you're talking about certain experiences in life, like being a good neighbor, that okay, you did such and such, but you are more than such and such, and your friend might have done this, but why did they do that? Can you think about why they did that any more than when you did something? Why did you do that? Just being considerate of each other, and consider that, and be positive, just really positive, and know that the inside knows the answer. Like I say to one of my grandchildren when he seemed to misplace something, I said, just ask yourself, just stop, ask yourself, where did you leave that? And so just taking a breath and ask. And so it's a kind of a subtle way of telling them it's your higher self is guiding you to what you need to know and where you need to go. So
what you need to know and where you need to go. I like that.
Yes.
Yeah, and that concept of asking, of having them ask, why did they do it, or why did you do something? The immediate thing that jumped into my mind is there's no blaming, there's no condemning, there's no judging in that. It's a curiosity, it's an inquisitiveness that our teaching is supposed to have at its core, is that we need to engage the mystery of life, which is everything in it. And so don't judge it. Look at it, turn it different ways. And then you can, if you're going to ask a question, you can probably come up with a better question as opposed to just being reactive. I love that. I love that.
We have to, I believe, come back. Z, you just hit on it, right? And it's been my thing now for a while, but it comes back to, what are the questions we're asking? Right. And just the way we're talking about it, right, Reverend Joyful? You get to play with your grandkids, which means the kids are old enough that they went through their, let's say, normal, I don't want to call it teenage rebellion, but your kids had that chance to go through that normal stage of questioning, do I believe what it is my parents have been teaching me?
Right. I remember my youngest son, probably 5-10 years ago, said something to me, and I was kind of stunned. And he said, "Well, you thought I wasn't listening, but I was."
Exactly. And that's part of what I'm seeing here, right? Is we can't, and I'm sure there's plenty of parents out there right now who have kids that have said, "Yeah, I don't believe what you're talking about," and don't, and have chosen to look at life from another path. Part of, for me, New Thought is we come to it when we can give the most to it, and it can give us the most in return. But we have to be willing to approach the philosophy, approach the practices, and be in a place. And I've reflected on this recently with other friends that, right, not everybody comes in the door feeling broken, abused, or not good enough. But the majority of people do. And there is a group of people that are coming in the door that feel like, I got my stuff together. What's this thing? And I think more and more we see more young people in that place where, whether they do or they don't, whether our perspective is they do or they don't, they feel like, I've got some stuff together. And I think a lot of it is this generational upbringing that they can't really identify or don't identify as New Thought. But if you sit and chat with them long enough, they go, "Oh yeah, my great grandma was in Unity," or "My grandma was, oh, there it is, yeah," and it's still kind of there for you.
Right. Yes. Right. It's passed down through the generation.
And you know what's interesting?
Yes.
Yeah, and what's interesting there, that you bring up is that, I guess not in the religious context, but like in general, like we, in a lot of ways, we tell our kids, "Boy, I don't understand your music." Our parents told us, "I don't understand your music," and I'm probably sure that was ubiquitous, right? But what it brought up for me was this idea that as we keep living, I used to, try to go back and forth with my father, and he would do it for a minute, if you will, and then he'd say, "Well, just keep living. If you just keep living, you're gonna come around to this point right here, and then maybe you'll see it from a different perspective, right?" And I think, when I look at the world now, the world is more New Thought in general. When we look at the types of things, the commercials, the movies, take away all of the crazy ones, but that New Thought perspective and philosophy is now becoming steeped in our culture.
Yes.
And it's gonna be, I hate to use this term, it's gonna be like a Manchurian candidate, maybe, that something's gonna happen and consciousness of everybody is going to wake up and say, "Oh my goodness, what is going on?" And I need to get busy.
Well, technology shows us how we're connected too. It's definitely we're awakening as a collective consciousness to a different way of thinking and feeling and responding to each other. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. I find it fall back a lot to something you say, Z, and that is, right, this is a whole system kind of conversation. And to me, so it does matter where you enter into the conversation. Today, we entered into the conversation exploring the full cycle of life, and and being reminded and having a moment or two to reflect on not only our own mortality, but the experiences around that transition of our lives. But from there, we get to take that and look at it and say, okay, so what do I want to do with this information now?
Mm-hmm.
And New Thought is great. And there's a lot of great communities, a lot of great organizations that are really good at disseminating information. For me, one of the things I see is now more than ever, it's time to activate that information and not just be sharing that this is real and this is how it works and this is what you do if you want this. And if you want to get rid of that crick in your back, you say this prayer. And if you want to get some more money, you say this prayer. And if you want to find yourself a good relationship, you say this prayer over here. And you know, today's market, you just got to think about it. Somebody will give you a car. It's like, that's the way it is. But we've got to learn, but we've got to really be willing to say, okay, how do I individually take this and do some good with it?
Yes.
Do some real good with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And make a difference, a contribution, you know, is part of your legacy to the greater good.
It reminds me of that statement that Ernest Holmes would say, you know, I'd rather you learn one paragraph, and I'm paraphrasing, one paragraph of this teaching and activate it in your life than to be able to memorize this whole book. That activation begins to create that environment. It creates that feel. And so when people get in it, they may not do what you do, but they'll be activated to do whatever it is resonating within them based on that vibration, that energy field, that consciousness that you set forth. And it's amazing when, you know, that flow state, that's that flow state that we get in. And when we can do it consciously, which is what this workshop at work was about today, was about how do you consciously get in the flow so that it's not something just occurs and you enjoy it and you're very effective, but now it's going and you're trying to figure out what's next. Or how did I get there? And they're doing studies on the brain and all kinds of things to try to understand that, to help people be more and more in that flow than not.
Well, heck, that's easy. We got that answer.
Yes.
Anybody watching this program now or at another time, if you just didn't scream out the word meditation, you're not paying attention, right? We've got that. We have the key on how to get into that flow state, of how to get into that imaginative mind and that place of allowing. Heck yeah, we got that.
That's right.
It's amazing. It's fascinating.
It is. And one of the things that's really struck me today is we say it on this program and in other places that, right, the decisions we're making today affect 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. And whether we want to believe that or not, you here today, Reverend Joyful, you represent 7 generations. You believe you can collective, and you sit right kind of in the middle of it almost, right? That you have both the history and the future of this philosophy with insight. The very early stages and into the possibility of what comes next. And that to me is why it's so important for every one of us to be a part of what's going on, to find that place to serve that is ours to serve, to give in a way that only we can give. Why it is so important that every one of us creates an environment, a mental environment, emotional environment, a physical environment that supports us, that feel is grounding but allowing us to move forward with the philosophy and into something greater. This has been a really fun conversation. Thank you.
And it's our responsibility too to discover what it is that we are to share, and then to do it. I think it.
Our excuse me, dear friend, Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson, who's no stranger to the program, is with us, saying, as Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. Yes. Getting in the flow, in the zone, is precisely there. We resist the bliss by being overly addicted to the things we've been conditioned to pursue. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Dr. Raymond, we got to get you scheduled to get back on here and share your wisdom with us live and in real time. Thank you for watching, brother. Thank you for watching. All right, folks, we're going to take another real quick break. Say thank you to our organizational sponsors and individual donors, the people that make all this happen here as part of the New Thought Media Network. But don't go away. Stay with us. We're going to be right back in just a minute with our final thoughts for today and our thank you to Reverend Joyful. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Yes. Thank you to all of our organizational sponsors and individual donors. It's thanks to folks like you that we're able to take this mighty message of the New Thought movement out into the world, share it in these programs and all of our programming. If you'd like to learn more, head on over to our website, ntmedia.org/donate. We'll get you in our next thank you video. All right. Thank you. And with our thank yous, Reverend Joyful, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you very much.
It's good that you're here. And we have a tradition around here called Final Thoughts, where we get a chance to circle around the room before we wrap it all up. And today we're going to start with my brother, Elzia. Rev Z, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just so enjoyed this. And the one thing that continues to pound in my head after this conversation is we have to get more. And you know, my wife doesn't like me to say have to, but I'm going to say we have to get more into whole system living, right? Where we are looking at life as one complete system, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and that they're all intertwined, and that we have to begin to live from that knowledge and understanding, and with that in mind when we do anything. And so that's a great reminder for me, Reverend Joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Reverend Joyful, final thoughts.
Well, yes, thank you very, very much for this opportunity. I enjoyed it so much. And if anyone is interested in some of the work that I do, I invite you to go to joyfulcircle.org, and also a series of classes that I do facilitate do focus on the different areas of our life, as was mentioned by Reverend Z, and that we talk about all aspects of every area of our life, mental and emotional, spiritual, physical, and practical. And also, I do lead support groups for grief and other things. So I really would look forward to hearing from you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. And I also appreciate you being here today and joining us in all of this. We've had such a great conversation. I completely forgot to mention your work on the board at the International New Thought Alliance and the work that we're getting to do there together. I am currently actually in Mesa, Arizona at the archives that we're preparing to move. And I know that you've been involved in those conversations as well. So we're going to have you back on for that conversation another time. For a deeper conversation. But for me, this conversation also was very, very rich. And it really, it anchored for me the importance of holding that space for the multi-generations. Whether you're the first generation in your family that's learned of New Thought, or the fifth or the seventh or whatever it is, but to be in that place of holding that sense of multi-generational wisdom that we are inheriting, but also passing forward and infusing that with the New Thought philosophy, New Thought practices and principles. So I think it was I'm going to chalk this one up as a win and put this in the top 20 on the archives. And we've got about 4 years of shows now, so the top 20 is a pretty good spot to be in, I'm just going to say.
Awesome.
Folks, thank you so much for being with us here today on the New Thought Media Network. On behalf of myself, Rev Z, Rev Joyful, and all of our team, we want to thank you for being a part of what we're doing here. Until next time, we wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.
Bye.